Great. Okay, guys, this is Dr. Lynn. Welcome everybody to Facebook Land, and welcome to you here tonight live to see the class. This is actually one of our core classes that we do actually on time, frequency, and intensity combined with the safety pin cycle. So we're really getting two for one here, and it's great. And what's wonderful about this class tonight is for the first time, we're going to actually have a patient share their experience about how knowing these principles of getting to a state of great health, knowing these things and applying what they knew was a role in that. I really appreciate being here. I'm going to do that tonight too. Okay. So this is a class we do for our newest patients. It's important that they understand, agree to, and apply these principles because if we don't do that, or we do it to kind of a lesser degree than what it takes to get the best results, we may not get the results we want or not get the results we want at all. An example I often give in this whole regard is let's say we're going to bake a cake. Okay. I know cakes, I'm not much of a chef, but I know that cakes have four ingredients. One is for sure it has to have eggs, milk, flour, and sugar, right? Those have to be there. There might be a few other things to go with it too. Now, if we only include, say, eggs and milk, and there's no flour and sugar, we're going to make something, probably an omelet, right? Or scrambled eggs, but we won't not have a cake. And there's nothing wrong with an omelet. I actually love this. It's actually a great meal, but it's not getting us to our desired goal. So these concepts when we share tonight, if you can take and apply them to the highest degree you can, the chances of arriving where you want to be are very, very high. And we have a living example of for not only herself, but actually for three little people that she was responsible for, and actually kind of a husband too, which is kind of very fun, all right? So in a nutshell, guys, the safety pin cycle is something that chiropractors came up with years ago. It actually goes back to the earliest things in chiropractic. They were trying to understand how's our body wired to work, and then how does it get wrong, and how do we make it right again? And so if you just think of a safety pin has two ends to it. We have these coils here, and there's one actually has a snap on it like this, and it forms a complete loop. And so for a safety pin, it was developed actually to, make things that we need to clasp, like say a cloth diaper or a coat or something like that, so that we need to clasp there too. A straight pin doesn't work. Somebody's gonna get poked and it's not going to work. But a safety pin does. And so, excuse me, when it's closed, it's great. And actually, if it's to unclose it like this, is to put it on, but you don't want to leave it that way because it's no better than a straight pin. It's going to come right out, correct? So really, your body works the same way. If you think about your body, let's put it this way: you have a brain and you have a whole bunch of body tissues down here. They estimate your body has about 70 trillion cells that make it up, if you can imagine that. They're organized in different systems: GI system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system, muscular system, all these things, right? And they're differentiated how they look and how they function. But essentially, what has to happen is your brain has to be aware of what's happening down here and be able to send messages down to tell it how to do things. So right now, is your heart beating? Yes. Are you breathing? Yes. Do you think you might be digesting lunch or maybe dinner if you've had that too? Yeah. It's all happening. Many of those things are happening subconsciously. We call that autonomic. It's actually self-governing. Now, there are also automatic functions we have, like I need to scratch the top of my head. So the command goes to my brain, to my arm, and I bring it up, and I can stop when I realize when I touch my head, I scratch the offending whatever it is and put it back down like that, right? So some of those things are conscious too, but for any of those things to actually work properly, there has to be communication. In other words, there has to be something sending messages down here. And when the cell gets its information to do its job, then it has to be able to send things back to the top and tell it to now auto-regulate a certain way because it's either accomplished the task or it needs to go on further. For example, if we all got out here and decided we wanted to run to high V, there's some things that would probably happen pretty much right away. First of all, your legs would start to move, wouldn't they? Now, what would happen to your respiratory rate? It would go up, right? What would happen to your heart rate? Yes. What would happen to your sweat response to cool your body off, right? Yeah. Okay. All these things. Would your senses be typically more awake at that time? Yeah. You're never more alive when you're exercising, right? That's just a great time to make sure you're fully aware of what's going on so you don't fall over and so forth. So that only works well if this is going on here too. Now, again, the heart rate and the breathing automatically happen for you. Now, when you stop running, okay, you consciously make a choice to stop moving your legs so aggressively. What then happens to your heart rate and your breathing? They slow down. What happens to your sweat response? Right? What happens to your level of alertness? It kind of fires it down, right? So that's all being auto-regulated for you, but through this connection. And your body is able to do all those things just fine as long as that connection stays there. The problem is we have something happen like this, right? If we change the connection between your brain and your body, we have a big problem, don't we? Now, in most cases, it's not this severe where it's completely broken. This would, if you look at a complete break like this would be something like Christopher Reeve. Somebody falls off a horse and breaks their neck, where below that point, nothing works, right? He was in a wheelchair for the last 10 years of his life. No arms working, no legs working, a machine breathing for him. That's a significant thing. But if even this is just broken a little bit, there's a disconnection there too. It's something less than 100% getting from here to this tissue and from this tissue back to the brain. And so therefore, The command center is not able to do its job properly, and this isn't able to talk back to the brain and tell, here's how to change what's happening on here, speed up or slow it down, and guess what happens? You become less fit to adapt. So you get exposed when you're like this to a virus that maybe comes into your nose, and you say, oh, there's a germ, we're going to fight that right away and kill it off. You don't get sick. You're functioning now at 70%. Let's say you actually had a poor night's sleep. You've been eating a whole bunch of goodies that are all sugary. Okay, you're stressed out beyond belief, and whatever goes on that day, you're not getting to the gym, and all of a sudden now your body's working below, and now you get the same virus comes in. Guess what happens? It gets past the first line of defense, and what do we have? Cold, flu, earache, whatever it might be. So our job as people who own bodies who actually have a safety pin cycle is to make sure that this stays as close to fully connected throughout our lives as possible. If you can make every healthcare decision in front of you that way, saying, is this decision going to move me closer to this or this? All of a sudden, your choices get pretty easy, right? Like what you're going to say, for example, have for something to eat that would actually promote better, healthier cells down here. Not something sugary, but actually it's like a vegetable or fruit. Or instead of getting stressed out, I'm going to think positive thoughts. Or I'm going to pray, or I'm going to exercise and keep this pathway working well. But guys, part of your care has to include staying subluxation free. We have to make sure that we're getting checked for things that happen like this and getting them reset, or guess what happens? We tend to have breakdowns and our bodies keep breaking down. And sadly, most of the public does not know this. Now, I'm thankful from the time that I graduated from chiropractic college until now, the number of people who actually have used chiropractic care at any point in their life has gone from about 10 or 12% to they estimate it's about maybe between 25 and 30%. So it's almost doubled, which is awesome. Now, those could have been people who actually went in one time and never went back. Those could include people that we've cared for in our system that we've seen over 1,000 times to keep them in shape now and so forth like that. But that's pretty neat. What they say is when we get to the point of critical mass and we need to keep working this way, somewhere around 50%, all of a sudden it's be like self-evident. People are like, well, of course you do that sort of thing. And now I'm actually having some great conversations with patients where they're telling me, we've just found out that everybody that's in our close community, we would call our closest friends, we all have chiropractors. Like there's kind of a really positive peer pressure that's actually set in for people to keep their bodies healthy. So the question becomes then, how can we make sure that we actually can get the safety pin cycle and get it taken care of and stay healthy for the rest of our lives this way? Well, in one of our classes, which we're going to combine with this one side, we talk about the things that really have to happen for care to happen and to actually make a positive change. And this is true of anything. If you're thinking about, for example, like, Joni, what would you say are some things you would have to do to become a great teacher on a regular basis? What would you have to do? Plan, right? Do your lesson plans. What else? There you go. Don't keep doing the same thing. What else?
Know the subject matter.
Yeah, have reviewed the material for sure, right? Yeah, what else? Anything else you can do? You have your continuing education, which keeps you up to standards, right? And then
You have to adapt to new technology
yes,
and be able
for
to
sure.
incorporate the new technology.
Yeah, use the best tools, and sometimes you have to individuate for certain students who may not be fitting the traditional learning model, right? All great things. And is it safe to say, Joni, when you were teaching, were you a better teacher your 20th year than you were your 10th year? Yeah, because you've done it enough times to really have that. It's like this feels like a very comfortable glove now. I can do this, and I can adapt to whatever the students bring to me that day. Well, guys, getting better in chiropractic is no different than this. Like there are a certain amount of time that's going to be involved to change your spine. Sadly, in chiropractic, if most people when they were born, if they say their parents were given a like here's your baby's life manual, and include in there your child should be checked for subluxations once a month for the rest of their life. Can you imagine what a different world we would have if kids actually could maintain that from the week they were born through their last breath being checked? Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing? It'd be fantastic. Okay. The problem is when the average Joe or Jane walks through our doors with their first real complaint, musculoskeletally or whatever they think of chiropractic doing sort of thing, they might be 30, 40, 50 years old. And so at one time a month for 30 years, right? 12 times 30, we're 360 visits behind schedule. So can you see why we have a lot of cleanup to do when people first come in? They may actually have significant losses of the normal curves in their spine, or actually front to back alignment. They may have unlevel hips from something that happened when they were younger, um, or even like just a family tendency. They could have postural habits that have set in where they text every night for 2 hours with their head bent. They may be playing video games in these really like fetal curved chairs. They may be very sedentary at their desk. So many things could be there. The number of times they've done those things and the intensity of those things have worked against them. So we have to undo those things. That does come from time, frequency, and intensity. Okay. So you can imagine the time element, it would be this. When I first talk with patients in his office, it has to be something along the lines of, can you set aside and set the margin for your head that there's going to be some time involved to get better, at least the first 6 to 12 months to get this taken care of. And for a lot of people, it's like, wow, I've never done anything for 6 or 12 months of my life. I go to the gym, get all started in January, and by February, I'm usually done. And I have to start up again the following year because they just lose interest or lose whatever it is. So time as the element is a big deal because again, to change anything, have you ever seen those things where they show the transformations of people who have lost weight, right? Maybe over the course of 3 6 months. If you look at it day to day, there's really very subtle changes happening. But you look at 3 months later, man, also people are in different clothes, their pants are falling off them. You can actually see their abdominals now. Really great things like that. So transformation happens slowly over time. There's a frequency involved, right? You have to do things enough times to actually make a positive change. It's called spaced repetition. This is why studying on a regular basis pays off versus cramming the night before a test, right? I study a few chapters here. It becomes part of my thing. I go to sleep. I wake up. I learn to memorize it and whatever have you. Versus I don't do any studying, and now, oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock, I have a test tomorrow, and they stay up till 2 a.m. trying to pour all this information, and it doesn't stick, or at least doesn't stick as well, right? So there's a frequency involved there. They actually estimate that it's going to take it to master something. If you want to master piano, it takes about 10,000 hours to do that. So get started, practice often, practice daily, right? Get there. And the last thing is intensity. Joni, when you actually had students doing homework, could you tell the difference between those who actually had really paid attention, and those who just kind of mailed it in? Yeah, isn't it obvious, right? When you go to a piano recital, you go to this, you can tell the kids who have really spent a lot of time doing it. They're precise, they're on point, and so forth, versus those just kind of get through the thing because they're being told you have to get this done. So the intensity is something that we have to bring sensitivity to, which is a heart thing, right? And part of that, what we tell our patients is you're going to have to learn how to care for your bodies in new ways, which is why we have this spaced repetition of our spinal workshops. We want you to get to one workshop a year. It's actually a required part of your care for the first year to learn how to care for body differently. This is one of our core classes that's going to show you how these principles apply to getting healthier. And then guess what? The last 9 classes, you choose anything you want. We have so many classes on so many topics. We have special guest speakers like our one tonight. We actually have some coming up this month on osteoporosis, how to beat that naturally. I'm going to have a class on how to spare your brain, or actually how to lose your brain as fast as you want to. It's up to you. Um, and then some other things too. And we actually have already gotten some ideas for next year's classes. 2025, we already have about 6 new classes I think that we'll be doing, which is super exciting to me. And some of those will involve guest speakers. So the question that becomes is, okay, you're coming to see us. We're going to actually talk about time, frequency, and intensity to restore the connection of your safety pin cycle so your brain and body can work together. How does that really work in a busy person's life? And I could not think of a better person to talk about this than Emily tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce Emily real quickly by saying just a couple things about Emily. And you can share your story and ask a few key questions. So what I love about Emily, we actually as a team talked about some traits we like about Emily. One is that Emily actually learns and understands. Emily will sit there and ask questions of you until she really has her mind wrapped about it. And she recognizes what's good in life and what's good in care. She actually specifically called into our office. I'll tell you that happened, asking for this type of care. Do you remember, Emily? It's like last summer, right? Yep. She actually takes her intensity of home care very seriously. Emily will make sure that for herself and for her kids and for her family, that whatever they're supposed to do at home, that their form is correct, that they're doing the right number of them and over the right amount of time to do those. She loves her family, and she's definitely a person of faith and integrity. That's what I love about you, Emily. That's a great patient to work with. I can't tell you, if I was to write the script for a great patient, that would make my list. Emily's experience was this. Before coming to our office, Emily had the experience of seeing a colleague of mine who practices in Fort Collins, Colorado. I've known him for about 7 or 8 years now. And he said, when he heard they were actually moving here, he said, hey, you should consider seeing Dr. Lynn. And so she specifically sought us out for that reason, because we do similar types of care. He actually had educated them and cared for them well. He had taught them and cared for them well. He actually gave them our names as a referral. She came in with great experience and high expectations. Now, sometimes patients, guys, they're so beaten down, they're just like, is this going to help really? Like, they're just really in a bad way. Emily has had very positive expectations. And she also, I think, is an extreme humanitarian because she wanted this care for herself and for her whole family. So that is a fantastic patient to work with. So Emily, what I'd like to do is have you come up and talk about how you've arranged in a very busy life, okay, time, frequency, and intensity to keep your safety pin cycles closed and working well. Okay? So let's give her a little welcome here. This is great. Yes. Emily, come up. I'll make sure the mic is here so you can be heard, okay? So go ahead, Emily, share your story, and I'll ask a few key questions on the way here, okay?
So, like Dr. Lynn, not Dr. Ryan. Like Dr. Lynn said, my name is Emily. My chiropractic journey actually began in about 2010. My husband and I had been married for 6 months, and just like Dr. Lynn's office is in a facility that has a lot of different businesses around. Our chiropractor in Colorado is in a facility like this, literally right across the street from our apartment. We saw they were having like a fall festival street fair thing, so we're like, let's go and check it out. And the chiropractor was giving away 15-minute massages in a massage chair. So I know very few women who's going to pass that up. So we went over, we filled out the information to come in and get a spinal exam done. And at that point, I was suffering a lot from like chronic Charlie horses and leg cramps. I'd wake up almost screaming because I was in so much pain at night. And so that was my primary complaint when I first went in. And, every chiropractor I think will say, well, I can't guarantee that we'll take care of the problem, but let's look at your spine and do what we can. 5 years later, I found out I was pregnant with twins, and I was getting chiropractic care throughout my pregnancy. By the end of my pregnancy, I was getting adjusted 3 times a week. And I was also, between the chiropractor and my prenatal appointments, I kind of felt like I lived at doctor's offices. But I made that time, I made that priority, because the research says women who get adjusted during their pregnancies have easier delivery. Now, twins, I knew the likelihood I was going to have a C-section was really super high, but at the same time, a twin pregnancy averages 35 weeks. My twin pregnancy went to 37 weeks and 4 days, which is almost unheard of. When I got pregnant with my son, my second pregnancy, the first thing the doctor said when she walked into the room was, "Did you really carry to 37 weeks?" I said, 37 weeks and 4 days. She couldn't believe it. When my girls were born, one was in the neonatal ICU, the other one was in the room with me. I called my chiropractor and said, "Hey, the babies are here." He actually came to the hospital to visit me and adjusted Elizabeth in the hospital. That was her first appointment. Abigail got discharged Thanksgiving Day. They were closed the following Friday. So the following Monday, we were at the office and Abigail got her first adjustment. Similar story with David, my son. He was in the NICU for about 2 weeks before he got discharged. One of our first stops was to our chiropractor. By the time my son was born, we were living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, the chiropractor that we saw there was adjust and go. There was no traction, there was no power plates, there was no icing. And I would leave, and the next day I would have the same pain and discomfort that I had from the day before. And I felt like, why am I spending this time here? Why am I spending my money here? Because we had to pay out of pocket at that point if I'm not going to feel any better. And I told Dr. Lynn when we moved to Nebraska, I walked into his office and it felt like home because he's got all the traction here. You have the power plates here. It felt like I was walking back into Dr. Ryan's office in Colorado, and I knew that we were going to be at a great place. So, my kids have been adjusted regularly. My children, when they were about 3 or 4, they'd run in, jump on the tables. They were so excited to get adjusted. They would want to go first and make me wait. When we moved and we had the packing tape roller thing, they would be scanning each other's backs like a thermal scanner because they had that experience where they got checked regularly. Again, our chiropractor in Albuquerque didn't do that. They took x-rays at the very beginning and then just did adjustments and didn't do any rechecks, didn't evaluate our posture. So they couldn't keep up with the ways that our body was changing because they weren't evaluating it. About 3 years ago, my daughter Abigail had a traumatic fall. She fell 15 feet. She shattered her skull, had to have the majority of her temporal lobe removed. She spent 6 months in the hospital. The hospital had a chiropractor on staff. I asked repeatedly if the chiropractor could come see her, come adjust her, because most of the time that she was in the hospital, she also could not walk. So most of the time she was in the hospital, she was bedridden. I was told no. You're going to find this funny. I was told no because they didn't see any subluxations on the films. Dr. Lynn is going to pull up her x-rays for you guys to see.
Once you hold this, I want to see if you can hear you. I'll show you. So if you stand to that side, you can look at the screen and you can point out. excuse me. Okay.
Okay, so this is her skull. You can see how her skull is tilted and is not going straight up and down versus the green lines is, where how her skull should be. So her entire skull is tilted to the left. Now the left side is the side that she impacted, so it would make sense that that's the side that's off center. The second x-ray down here is, you can see her rib cage, you can see her pelvis. So again, she's off center. She's going to the left. And then on the right, you can also see how her hips are out of line because she now wears a device on her leg to help keep her toes pointed straight. So we had to fix that in difference with a heel lift, and she's walking better, she's moving better. This is her back from the side, so you can see how her spine is shifted forward. Her curve isn't quite back where it should be. And then I think we have one more. So this is her neck. Her neck has like no curve in it right now. It's straight. And we have been working on being able to get that neck curve back to where it belongs. We just did her x-rays again yesterday, and Dr. Lin was saying that even without doing the measurements, he can tell that there is an improvement. So for those doctors in the hospital to say they don't see any subluxations on her films is just ridiculous. I could not believe it. Your spine is going to be your most important investment. Your health is going to be your most important investment. I've heard of patients who have monitoring devices for their blood pressure. Every time they get adjusted, the first 24 hours, their blood sugars, monitoring devices for their blood sugars. Every time they get adjusted, the first 24 hours, their blood sugar drops and it stays lower. With my own daughter, so she also had a seizure. She lost a lot of function on her left side. She's slowly been getting that back. Right now, her left hand is really tight. It's really fisted. Over the last year, since we started seeing Dr. Lin and started with her occupational therapy, her hand has gone from a fist to just kind of loose, but her thumb is still tucked. Well, now we're seeing her thumb get untucked and start to get more mobility in it. And with that, we're hoping that she'll start to regain function in her hand. Every single time we get her adjusted, we focus specifically on her hand. Her fingers start moving involuntary more during the first 24 hours after adjustment. So right now she's getting adjusted 2 times a week. Now, during the summer, we're doing extra physical therapy. We have physical therapy twice a week. We've got occupational therapy twice a week. I've got behavioral health appointments. My daughter has behavioral health appointments. When Dr. Lin says I'm busy, there are sometimes I don't know how I have time to eat my meals. So yeah, but I also know this is an investment in not only my health, but my kids. And if I want to be here for my grandkids, and if I want my kids to be set up for success as adults, this is worth the time and the effort and the energy and the resources. It's like, I was thinking earlier today, it's like a rusty chain. If you have a chain and you maintain the chain and you keep it oiled and you don't let the rust build up on it, that chain is going to last for years. But if you neglect the chain, if you leave it out in the weather, if you don't oil it, if you don't take care of it, the rust, it's going to grow brittle and it's going to break. And that's where we get osteoporosis. So when you guys get adjusted, there's actually fluid there's fluid that gets released during an adjustment to help hydrate the joints.
It for sure moves better. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that lubrication part. When we're exercising, we're moving our joints, we're using our joints the way that we need to keep them functioning so that we don't get that disconnect between our brain and our bodies. The amount of pressure on your spine that it takes to have a subluxation in your body is the weight of a dime. The weight of a dime can disrupt that pattern between your brain and the rest of the body. So if someone were to ask me who chiropractic is for, I would say it's for infants, it's for adults, it's for great grandparents, it's for anybody who is breathing. One last story.
Yeah, sure.
So when my son was born, he would not turn his head to the left. I had a really hard time nursing him because of this. And he was in the hospital for about 2 weeks. I had to hold him a different position based on what side of my body he was on. When we got out of the hospital, my first stop Monday morning was to the chiropractor. I said, there's something going on in his neck. He refuses to turn it. It's not just when he's nursing, it's when he's laying. He doesn't turn it to that side. They got out the thermal scanner, checked his neck. Sure enough, right here was subluxated. As soon as we got it adjusted, he started turning to that side. He could nurse normally on both sides. And the difference between his ability to do something as simple as nurse after an adjustment was just incredible.
So, you say for just real quickly.
Yep.
So my last thing I want to ask you, I mean, it's really great to hear how their lives have changed, and she shared some of it. Just amazing changes in their films, their function and quality of life, even for hubby, which has been great, you know. But what I want to ask you, Emily, is in that busyness and stuff like this, how did you make time, frequency, intensity enough to be able to make those kind of changes, both here and at home? What was your secret, or some tips you might have for people to have people realize that they actually can see themselves doing this?
So as far as the time for being here, we just kind of looked at our schedule. We said, okay, we've got this going on this day, we've got that going on that day, we've got this going on. So we just looked for those little pockets of openings where we could all come in at the same time. When we're at home, we usually pair it up with something else. So a lot of times when the kids get home from school, they're tired, they want a snack, they don't want to start on their homework. So I send the kids off to their room. They go and they do their traction while they're taking that break and reset after school. A lot of times they like putting on a meditation that they can listen to just kind of decompress from the day. The intensity, I think it just goes with routine. As these things become routine and then you skip a day, you realize how much better you feel when you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so it just becomes well, I really guess I should do traction, to no, I want to do traction because I want to feel good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, guys, is that you can, please
Okay.
go have a seat. I appreciate it, Emily. So I want to share this last story with this. So sometimes, I mean, we all only get 24 hours a day, right? You don't get any more, Joan. You don't get 25. You get 23. I get 27, right? It's just, they say it's this great equalizer. The question is, will you choose to invest or spend those moments, right? And how you choose to allocate them. And what typically happens is the parts of your life you allocate them to become a bigger part. So we have somebody that we care for. I'm giving a shout out to her. She knows who I'm talking about if she's listening to this. She's a very busy young person, has just graduated from college, is in her first kind of big boy job, big girl job, shall we say. And she has a lot of responsibilities. And some of these things really come to a head at a very busy time for different things that are events throughout her year. Well, she has lots of things she wants to do for her health too. And we actually gave her home regimen to work on. She looked at it and said, wow, that's 10 or 12 minutes. So how do I get that done? But she realized that she had, in addition to doing her home traction and exercises, especially her traction, she wanted to have healthy gums and healthy teeth. She wanted to actually be putting some positive input into her mind before she went to bed. And she also had been convinced that there's a lot of good things that are about red light therapy from infrared or LED lights working on you. So anyway, she said, I think I might be able to combine these things. So what she literally does, and this is just to end her day, she lays on her traction blocks. She's using coconut oil in her mouth, swishing it around to keep her gums and teeth healthy while listening to ear pods and actually having red light shine on her when she's doing this sort of thing. So 4 things at once. I thought that's a pretty powerful 10 to 15 minutes, right? So sometimes you just have to get creative. You have to think about what time do I have available? What do I want to do? And kind of make these things like 2 for 1 or things like that. You'd be amazed how efficient you get, especially when your mom is trying to raise 3 kids there too. So I really appreciate you guys being into this thing tonight. What I want you to just think about, your one takeaway is this. How do these principles of healing apply to you? Which one is kind of maybe pressed a sore point where you say, you know what? Actually, I have been doing doom scrolling for 10, 20 minutes. I actually have been doing traction. If you're doom scrolling on a cell phone like this, you're actually working against getting your spine corrected, right? So let's find maybe ways to do different things. But it, yes, go tell your arms to get tired, right? Yeah. That's good, and you'll stop. So, but just think about what's the one thing I need to take away from this class tonight that actually will help me get where I want to go. And the great thing is, guys, the effort you put in now, when you get to the point where your spine has really reached a very corrected and stable point, you'll still be doing something for it, but it becomes less, right? Like which is harder, losing weight or maintaining weight? Losing weight's harder, right? Which one's harder, getting in shape or staying in shape? Getting in shape, right? Getting back in the routine of doing things. But it's the same thing with chiropractic. A spine that's been neglected for 30, 40, 50 years is going to take at least a year to try and get rebuilt there. The great thing is you do the hard work on this end, to maintain it's going to be super easy, relatively speaking. Okay. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you being here tonight. I hope that this class has inspired you in some way. If you see Emily around here, just ask her for some more gems from her life, how she's done things. I want to thank you guys for being here tonight in live in person. That's so much, and for you being here on the Facebook class to be good. The rest of the month goes like this, guys. Next week we're supposed to have a class on honey, pollen, and bees and your health. We cannot do it live because the person who's going to do it is actually working that day, but we will record it and post it when they're available. The next week on July 16th is actually on osteoporosis, how to beat it and actually do it naturally without drugs. My friend Dr. Craig Bolsey is going to talk about a program called Be Strong for Life that can actually help people halt and reverse osteopenia and osteoporosis. July 23rd is actually how to choose the right Medicare plan. So if you're in that demographic where you're getting close to 65 or you're actually over 65, every year, you have to make a choice about what kind of plan you're going to choose. My friend Krista Peaks will be talking about that. And then lastly, I do a class at the end of the month on the 30th on how to shrink your brain. If you actually want to make your brain go away as fast as possible, I'll show you how. But if you want to make sure you preserve it for as good as you can, because you want to age well and make sure you know whoever is around you and all that good stuff, then we'll let you do the opposite of what I teach you in that class then too, which is great fun. Okay. So thanks for being here tonight, guys, and we'll see you soon.